Meeting of Council. The City of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their traditional territory upon which we gather with gratitude. But before we begin this afternoon, I wish to note that the city has proclaimed June 30th as Indigenous Survivors Day to acknowledge the resilience, strength, and cultural heritage of Indigenous communities who have persevered through historical trauma. The proclamation was requested by All Nations Outreach Society and was proclaimed as part of the city's ongoing commitment to reconciliation. I encourage all residents to read the news release on the city's website and take a moment to reflect on this important date. Thank you. Council, on the agenda, we have our consent agenda usually in place at this time. I would like to make a quick change as well, if I could. Moving on, going ahead, that the consent agenda include the following recommendations be approved: that the minutes of the council meeting held June 3rd, 2024 be adapted, that agenda item 2B, the report from the manager utility dated June 4th, 2024, entitled Water Use Planning and Management Study, be removed from the agenda. And I'll explain that in a second. That the June 17th, 2024 council meeting agenda be approved as amended. I have a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Gull, seconded by Councillor Wood. I'll just explain quickly. I have removed the water planning management study from the agenda today. Is only because, and I take full responsibility for this, in between myself being away at the FCM on conference anyways, and our CAO off on conference as well. Last week we had miscommunication on it and so forth, that I was expecting a draft report. I wasn't expecting it to appear onto the agenda. So the draft report wasn't able to be reviewed in time to be on the agenda today. And so we're actually just delaying it until we have a chance to actually review the draft report from that before we have it on the agenda, and it will be included on the next council agenda. That's why. It's just, as I say, it was just, I didn't communicate well with our expectations, and I did not realize that it was coming up on this agenda, and I approved the agenda with it on it. So it's all on me, folks. So that's why I've removed that from it. We want it. This is a very important water use study and an RFP proposal. We want to get it right. We have to get it right. And so I'll be obviously requesting some of your assistance and making sure we get that right before we actually go and put it on the agenda. Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. That is unanimous. Carries. So we have the first report on our agenda today is the Director of Community Planning and Building Development Permit Application 1128 Herring Gull Way to consider issuance of a development permit. We have no presentation scheduled. It was as per the background information in your agenda. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation as noted? Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Wood. Any discussion? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Gore.
Thank you, Mayor. And through you to our staff, we know that the industrial park sits on our aquifer, and I guess the planning, whatever was done years ago. My question to staff is the current DPAs that we have and the aquifer protection guidelines that we have, are they current, or do you think we could do better learning from other municipalities perhaps and improve our aquifer protection guidelines?
Thank you for that. I'll direct that question to Mr. Russell. If you could comment, answer on Councillor Gore's request, please.
Certainly, Mayor, if I may, through to Councillor Gore. With anything, there are always things that can be gleaned from other local governments' regulations. So at the time in the future, when we do review our development permit area guidelines, we will look to a wide assortment of development permit areas throughout the province to see if there's ideas that might be incorporated into our development permit areas where suitable. At this point in time, our system uses a professional reliance model where typically a hydrologist or geotechnical engineer does an assessment based on what's being proposed on the property and makes recommendations accordingly. In this case, this is a fairly basic application where what's really being proposed are lines to split the property, where future development of the site will be left to a subsequent development permit application that will address development on the property in greater detail.
Satisfied or follow up?
Just a quick follow-up. Thank you, Mayor. So to confirm, Mr. Russell, when we do revise the OCP, this is perhaps would be a good time to look at our DPAs for aquifer protection as well, correct?
If I may, Mayor O'Brien, to Councillor Gore, as part of a wholesome OCP review, that would be the scope of what we would be looking at. Whether there is time under the provincially mandated official community plan review, which is kind of OCP review light, which is really directed primarily at housing and changes to regulations. It may be challenging given the provincially mandated timeframe. However, I do anticipate after that project that a wholesome OCP review is something that council will likely be seeking, and that's anticipated in our future kind of work program deliberations.
Thank you for that, Mr. Russell. Great clarification, good information there. Any other questions regarding this report and this recommendation? All those in favor? Thank you. That carries unanimous. Moving on to the next report on the agenda is the Manager of Finance, a 2023 Statement of Financial Information, affectionately known as SOFI. Public reporting of the financial information in accordance with the Financial Information Act and associated regulations. Council, you've all seen that in your background information, the 2023 Statement of Finance. Do I have a mover and seconder for the recommendations? Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Grandins. Any discussion? Councillor Gore, go ahead, sir. Oh, you had your hand up first.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, question to staff. I was looking at page 57 and 58, where we have the remuneration and the expenses for council as well as our staff. I understand there is a policy that governs the expenses that council members can claim. I was wondering, I haven't read the policy, but if staff could apprise me, is there an individual limit to what, let's say, one council member can claim as expenses, or is it the whole sum of council that, let's say in a year, council members get about $50,000 that they can claim as expenses? And I just want to know, how is this expenses claimed and what's the limit?
Thank you, and we'll direct the question to CAO Kaler with possible assistance from Ms. Bowman. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We might have to tag team. So this council required staff to make changes to the expense policy. You may recall that occurred, I think, this year, might have been last year, but under your term. So there are not limits established, but there's eligibility. So there are items that are eligible for reimbursement, and that's laid out in the policy that applies to council. And so there are some items that are pre-approved each year in the budget. And so for example, UBCM attendance, FCM attendance for the mayor and one other councillor. Recently, council also added in attendance at the Vancouver Island Economic Alliance. So some items are pre-approved for expenses, and then you all have to follow the expense report and file those expenses, which are reviewed by staff against the policy or against the budget item, and then you're reimbursed for eligible expenses. So that's probably the best thing to do, is review that policy. That is a public policy that was endorsed and voted on by this council. And there are things like limits on alcohol reimbursement, for example, but not a set limit of you can claim up to 50,000 or anything like that. So it's based on submitting invoices for those eligible per diems. So things like your meals are stipulated in that policy, how much you're able to claim each day. So if, say, you went to a conference and you spent $150 on breakfast, you are not allowed to claim that full amount. There is a limit on the breakfast and the meals. So I'm not sure if that addresses your question or if there's something more specific.
If I may, thank you. Thank you for the background. The reason I bring it up is when you say there is no limit. But for council's expenses, we are not, how should I say this? We have a specific line item where the money is drawn. It's not that the money is being taken away from other revenue sources. So it's already allocated for these kind of expenses. So how come there is no annual limit of what people can claim?
So if I may, that council didn't specify that in the policy, so that was not direction given to us. So you could set that limit if you wished. Some communities do that, and I think we did have a brief discussion about that when we were looking at reviewing. Like for example, City of Vancouver, obviously a much larger city, they allocate a certain set amount to a councillor each year. You get that amount and you can spend it on whatever you want. So you could spend it on meetings with constituents, you could spend it on travel within the city, you could spend it on whatever you wish. But we have certain things limited, I guess, through the policy. So you're not allowed to claim certain expenses when you're within the city, for example, unless it's an extenuating circumstance. So if you were to go for lunch with a constituent in Parksville, you're not allowed to claim that as an expense. So I'm maybe not sure exactly what you're asking, but.
Thank you. And I just can reference as well that everything that we do anyways is all budgeted anyways. And we have like policies in place, like just as an example for the FCM conference that just happened 2 weeks ago. Parksville Council has a policy in place so that the mayor and one other individual goes to the FCM. However, I know on the previous council, at one time we had a request for another councillor to attend. The previous council discussed it and allowed it in that particular time to be added into the budget for that year for an additional one to go, and that's how it was amended at that particular time. But it wasn't based on any limit; it was based on the discussion at the time. So it's really, and the limits could change because obviously costs change. Like in the case of FCM, sometimes it's in Calgary and sometimes it's in Halifax. So obviously the costs change for the one particular conference considerably just for the fact that it's a considerably longer airplane. We did also have that discussion regarding the BILAWS, the Economic Alliance anyways, just with this council, and decided that there was interest from other council members. We had a discussion at this table that as many as wanted to attend the BIA could go, and so that has been built into the budget as well. Okay, and Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Gore is correct in kind of bringing it forward that whatever expenses councillor and mayor have, obviously they come out of property taxes, and so we should be very conscious that we bring value when we do spend those dollars. And for myself, I was the only one who attended the Federation of Canadian Municipalities last year in Toronto, and I'm very conscious that that does cost property taxes when I do that. It is qualified, obviously, under our current policy to send councillor and mayor to FCM each year. Really great this year that the Federation of Canadian Municipalities pushed for tax credit increase for volunteer firefighters and search and rescue across the entire country. And that's 140,000 volunteers, of which some obviously are in our local area. And so I feel like that was really, really good value for my trip because FCM played a role. And so I mention that because I'm very conscious that we have to bring value when we do go to these conferences, and that it's not just about meeting other mayors and councillors. So I wanted to bring that up. Thank you, Councillor Gore, for bringing it up.
Yes. Councillor Beil, next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for indulging a little bit of conversation about this.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
I know, I appreciate it. I would just like to add that 2 points, that by and large, if not exclusively, expenses are allocated for learning opportunities, for conferences, for meetings with a larger group. And they serve to educate us further in this important role. And I think that professional development, whatever the sphere, is really, really important. And an uneducated council, if you know what I mean, ill-informed, does not serve our citizens as well as one that is better informed. So these are, and I do appreciate at the same time that with the possibility for hybrid meetings and so on, that there are times when we can lessen our cost, but these events are really critical to learning more about how how to practice good governance.
Thank you. Councillor Gore, you good? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we've already got a mover and seconder. Could I have all those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. The next report on the agenda from the CAO is a follow-up report, UBCM Minister Meeting Requests to obtain council approval of the UBCM Minister Meeting Requests. Council, you have the report for those requests in your background information. I have a mover and seconder for the recommendations. Moved by Councillor Grenz, seconded by Councillor Martin. Any discussion? And for those in the audience, this is really to approve just as we were talking previously regarding our expenses for the conferences we did, and the UBCM is held once a year, and this year is in Vancouver coming up in September, where many of us will be attending that as well. But at the same time, we have the opportunity to meet directly, face to face, with the ministers, in this case, the provincial ministers, in charge of the various ministries. And we have chosen a couple of those ministers to meet with us because we have some situations that directly affect our community, and we need some answers and maybe some a little bit of arm twisting anyways, to maybe have the policies adjusted so forth to benefit our community better, or maybe to explain what we're doing. And we have an ask usually at the table anyways to amend their policy or to include something for the benefit of our community that's been brought to our attention that is perhaps a hardship for our community. And so that's where we go to debate with the individual ministers, and it's much appreciated that we have that opportunity at this level to do so. So that's what we're approving here right now, is those particular meetings, and they're very important meetings, and the ministers follow up afterwards with the response to all of us as to what the results of that meeting. So just to give you one example of what one item we do when we go to these conferences at the UBCM particularly. Councillor Beil.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just a question, will there be some additional wordsmithing or just tweaking of this, or if this is approved, it goes as presented? And I guess the one request that I would have is that regarding the request to meet with regarding health services needed to support population growth and senior demographic, that in the request for the summation of what we would like from the meeting, towards the bottom, we have to expedite access to healthcare providers for Parksville residents. I would very much like to see the word primary before healthcare providers. Now, I understand that it's 300 characters, so maybe that was it. So I wonder if a bit of tweaking could be done to add in the word primary, because I think that needs to be stressed over and over again by our council with any possibility.
Yeah, I would hope that it would be implied in the rest of the 60 words that are in it, but I would caution to suggest when we submit these requests that had a deadline on it, it gets submitted as it is. And if we start varying it in between now and the time that we meet a type of thing, I know that our discussion at the minister's table can actually include, it's going to be about primary health care. But the fact that I don't believe that we have that option of changing that request at this particular time.
Okay, because you're suggesting that would require an amendment. Is that your thought
I don't
there?
think an amendment, no, I'm saying that an amendment is not, because we're already past that deadline. Is it not?
But we're voting on this right now. I'm confused then. So has it already been submitted? Is that what you're saying?
CAO Kaler, yeah,
Oh.
you may.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the words, it is exactly 300 characters, so it's not just words, it's spaces as well. And our understanding when talking with the councillors that brought this forward is that it's kind of more than just primary health care. It's also the NRGH services. And as the mayor mentions, you can speak to as much as you wish in the meeting. but we have to submit it into a portal that cuts us off. So there's very limited opportunity to add additional language or wording. Like you just physically cannot go past the 300 characters. So, I mean, we could try to eliminate something, but then it won't read as a proper sentence. But it does not limit you from discussing that, though any specifics, whether it was physiotherapists or LPNs or GPs at the meeting. And so I think it's not just, from our understanding of talking with the counselors, it's not just GPs, it's other health providers, if I was correct in my interpretation.
Correct. Yeah, and that's so to speak, and definitely when we have our pre-meeting meeting with the people that will be attending the UBCM minister meetings, we have that discussion, so we each know our own roles, and certainly at that time, Councillor Beil, I would take any recommendations from yourself at that time to participate and to make sure that this is included, and I'd be more than happy to include that in the discussion. So, yeah.
Thank you for that, and thank you to our CAO. And I do appreciate that it is more than a request for primary health care providers. And I appreciate the reference to the needs for at NRGH and things that we need to have in our larger area here as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Carries unanimous. Thank you. The next report on the agenda from the CAO is our 2023 annual municipal report. The community charter requires municipalities to prepare an annual report regarding financial and operational progress in relation to objectives and measures established for the year. The 2023 annual report has been prepared and made available for public inspection. At this time, I would like to ask if there's any members of the council. Can I do that before I ask for an approval, or members of the public? Is now I do it or after? I would probably rather do it before we move forward.
Sorry, are you asking if the public want to make comments?
Yes. Yeah.
That's at your discretion. You
Yeah,
can do that whenever.
at this time. So I'd like to do that at this time. Is there anybody in the audience? And I want to confirm, has there been any correspondence from the public regarding the annual municipal report? It was well advertised on our website and so forth. And is there any members of the public here now? So first, if there's any correspondence that has been received.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have not received any correspondence yet in the admin section, but we do have until the 30th of June. If members of the public wish to submit that, we definitely welcome them to do that. And it is just to the council@parksville.ca email.
Good information. Thank you for that. Anybody from the public like to speak to the annual municipal report? I see none. Thank you. So I'm going to ask for a mover or seconder for the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Gore. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carries unanimous. Thank you, Council. Moving forward onto the bylaws, we have 3 readings today for the Zoning and Development Amendment Bylaw 2024, number 2000.148. A text amendment for small scale and multi-unit housing implementation and general housekeeping. Do I have a mover or seconder for the recommendation and notice? Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Beil. Any errors or omissions or discussion? All those in favor? Carries unanimous. Thank you. Are there any notices of motion moving forward to the next meeting? Seeing none, we'll move on. We'll move on to liaison reports. So we'll take it as Councillor Martin can start us off today with the liaison reports. Councillor Martin, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lots is happening in the different areas here. I wanted to mention that the museum is having 3 musical events on the 4th of July, 18th, and the 1st of August. They run from 6 to 8 p.m. They're on Thursday nights, and you can get your box office tickets from the museum or Evan Bright, go to the website, and there will be craft beer and food trucks on site. These are fabulous events. The first of them, Harry Max, is on July 4th, David Gogo, July 18th, and Brandon Isaac Trio on August 1st. So I suggest that people participate. The museum is a fabulous venue for any events that are there. That's for sure. We found out other years. The Mabry have had this event with there's 18 global students have been here studying our area. And what is really interesting, they gave a summit report last Thursday, and they studied our Scotch broom infestation with some solutions. I thought this was interesting. They picked up on that big time. It went on for 4 hours. I was there. So we'll be getting a complete printed report. So if anyone would like the printed report, when I get it, I could forward it to them. Also they had a wind-up picnic at Rathtrevor Beach on Friday. So these are graduate students, beginning students from all over the world. So that was quite an event for Mabry last week. And also there's a grand opening for their office in Qualicum on the 18th of August. So we'll be getting invitations to go to that. So they've got a new office that they organized in Qualicum. So this gives a higher profile, much more involved than just the university, just right in the community. So, and I have a PDBA one too that I'd like to share. It's not on the agenda, which I forgot. There's going to be Tuesday evenings at the plaza. Every Tuesday night we have a market. There'll be Tuesday evening with buskers. It's all family event. And so, it's for the children. Everything that they do is for the children, the families. On the June 22nd, it's a bluegrass band at the plaza in the evening. And also Canada Day, the PDBA is going to be strutting their stuff in the Canada Day parade. So that is a big deal for all of us. We know Canada Day is a big day, but they're doing it too. I forgot to mention also the fire truck, if it's repaired and organized, will be in the parade also from the museum. So that's all for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Beil.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to everyone. So I'll start off with ELCO. That's the Early Learning and Childcare Council of Oceanside. I met with them last week. And first of all, I'd like to mention that how much they appreciate the city is posting a link to the childcare survey on the website. And they would like to have it in place until the end of July, but someone will be in direct contact with someone in administration about that. The Wonderful World of Books. If people don't know about that, that's for families that have 3-year-olds and they receive books every month, I think, until they're of school age. And the Child Care Needs Assessment Survey, where both of these were highlighted at Qualicum Family Day. And the group is working towards a strategic planning session in September. With the Arts Council has their AGM coming up a little later this week. The concrete has been poured for the greenhouse in the art garden, and I know that that's been before council more than one occasion. There are exhibits in all their galleries and the box office is busy. A really special event occurred recently. There was an unveiling of the wonderful mosaic mural constructed by staff and students at Pass Woodwinds Alternate School. And the students have been working with the Arts Council mosaics instructor since April to create this lovely piece, and it really is stunning. I had a chance to see it before it was completed, and it is now on display at the school. With the Task Force on Homelessness, representation has expanded slightly to include someone from Island Health, who is a community health promoter, and perhaps more on that at a later date. In fact, I'd like to ask if you'd like to come before council to speak about what his role is. I think they're a fairly new role there in many areas on the island. And of note, this came up recently at the task force and then at a later event I was at. And of note, our community has the second or third highest per capita homelessness rate on Vancouver Island. And I think that might become as some surprise to people. We might think that Nanaimo would be higher, or I don't know, Duncan, but no. Port Alberni is first, Campbell River might be second, or we might be second, and then the Parksville, Qualicum area. More than Courtney, more than Duncan, more than Nanaimo, more than Victoria. This is per capita, of course. Also with the task force, there's ongoing work on recommendations for an emergency weather response, and that work has not been completed. And they're still awaiting confirmation on federal funding.
If I may, Councillor Beil, I just, you're talking about per capita, the homeless. Could you repeat that statement? I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
And I haven't looked it up directly. This has been reported twice now at events I was at. But the results from the point in time count that they have, and then they do analysis out of that. So out of that, it's come to light that our area, the point in time count was done here, that we have, and I heard second and the other one I heard third, so I'm not sure which, but we have the second or third highest per capita rate of homelessness on Vancouver Island. That doesn't mean, so you may go other places where it might be concentrated in smaller areas, but when one considers the population of the area that they're looking at. So that was a bit of a surprise, including quite surprising to some of the well-known individuals who work directly with the unhoused. So that was interesting. And I want to dig into that a little bit more as they bring out data around that.
So that is actually for the Oceanside region.
Well, I think they, in the point in time, I think they call it Parksville, Qualicum. But
Well, that's kind of,
it would be, I know that we could, and I can look into this further, and I think that that would be true also for instance, whether it be Port Alberni or whether it be Campbell River, you know, there's a larger area, but where they're actually doing the count is still a specific area. So I don't know how they're doing the count. If you're thinking that it should be the whole Oceanside area, then I imagine that would be, if that's how they're looking at it, I imagine that would be looked at the same in Port Alberni or in Campbell River or in Courtney Comox or Cowichan. So I don't know. Regardless, it was a surprisingly high number per capita, higher than the people who work with the population thought it would be. So that was interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would like clarification on if it is, because it is the actually Oceanside Task Force on Homelessness. And I would think the point of time can contain Oceanside. To suggest it's just Parksville and Qualicum, that's a totally different demographic. So I'm surprised at that, but I'm surprised, period. But anyhow, Councillor
Everybody was surprised. So
yeah,
and
yeah.
I understand the distinction I believe that you're making there with the Oceanside Task Force on Homelessness is Oceanside. They do not set how the point in time is done. It's done provincially wide. It's not done. It's not set up by the Oceanside Task Force. They work on it, or some people do, but
Yes,
it's organized by the province. That's all I want to say.
yes, I'm aware.
Yeah. Okay.
Councillor Grant, do you have a question?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'd be interested to hear more about that data, because I don't know, probably about a year ago, I did an analysis of the most recent, so the 2023 point in time count. And I took the numbers provided in the pit count relative to the numbers of population from the areas the pit count was drawn from. And based on my analysis, and I'm no statistician, but I did calculate the homeless per 1,000. And of every pit count I could find across the province. And based on that, based on my analysis, Parksville, Qualicum was near the bottom of the list in the province in per 1,000 homeless per 1,000.
I will say that this was the information that I was given was just regarding Vancouver Island, not the larger area, but absolutely. Certainly piques one interest to dig a little bit deeper, and I'll do that as well. Shall I move
You
on?
have a follow-up, Councillor Grant?
No, only thing is I would love if there's more information on that because absolutely I'm keen on having accurate statistics out there in the community. And if there are statistics that are going out there that don't reflect the reality, obviously, whatever it is, just like when BC Housing came before us and I asked for statistics on how many people are on the waiting list and how that is relative to the rest of the province. These are numbers that we need to know as a council in order to determine which direction we want to go in terms of our housing policy. So.
Yeah, and I would reflect that as well, that I would reflect any numbers to be actually after. This is a public meeting that we're doing right here, and this is for the public information. And so I would seek clarification on that as well, because the numbers don't jive from what our RCMP and the other service providers are actually telling us in our community. So I'm more than surprised. I would say I'm somewhat skeptical, but anyways, if more information could be provided, instead of just taking it as it is presented, I would like further clarification on that, if we could.
I'll see what I can find.
Yeah, thank you.
And perhaps for public record, let's say that it was higher, the rate was higher than people expected on per capita on Vancouver Island, but I'll certainly look into that. So may I continue?
Absolutely.
Oh,
thank
all
you.
right. Okay. I did want to mention, I don't know if I submitted, the Chamber of Commerce. I think everyone here knows that the Summer by the Sea Tuesday evening market has started. And I know personally that my out-of-town visitors enjoyed it very, very much. They were impressed to see how much is happening here in Parksville. They come from the big city of Victoria down island. And a different set of visitors enjoyed the offerings of the food trucks in the community park. And so I can vouch for that as well. And I enjoyed not having to prepare food on both of those days. So there. The Chamber's AGM is next Thursday, June 27th from 5 to 8 p.m. And again, I'm sure that anyone here who is available to attend would be welcome to look into getting some tickets for that. And carrying on, Vancouver Island Regional Library. I attended the library board meeting virtually while I was in Calgary, and luckily for me, with the time difference, most of it was over my lunch break. The borough, as I will call it, has received some grants to assist with the Masset Library and Haida Language Immersion Lab. And there was a groundbreaking ceremony held recently to indicate the start of the building of the new Masset Library up in Haida Gwaii. And anticipated construction is to be completed in the fourth quarter later this year. There was also, I thought this was interesting, the library has received a grant from Island Health for the installation of overdose detection sensors, which are being installed at 7 at-risk branches. They do not include Parksville. We are not considered one of the high-risk branches. But again, that's interesting. 4 have been installed and 3 more will be installed later, and they will monitor that to see how well that works. An audit for 2023 was completed on schedule with a clean opinion, and work is on developing the budget for 2025 is coming along with targets in the 3rd and 4th quarter. And working with VIU's business administration program, there's an intern has been engaged for a study to work on with the library. And other major projects are continuing with a scheduling and operating review. I'd also like to mention that I did attend the FCM recently, and I thank everyone for allowing me to attend. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The title was Redefining Our Future, the Urgent Need for a Municipal Growth Framework. And so the FCM, that's the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, for those of you out there who might not follow acronyms, is advocating for a new municipal growth framework to help achieve federal housing targets and ensure communities have the necessary infrastructure and services. And this is, of course, all across the country from coast to coast to coast. Collaborative efforts are needed from all orders of government to build sustainable communities now and in the future. This message was shared with representatives of the federal government, including the Prime Minister, who spoke and took part in a Q&A sessions. Myself, I took part in 2 study tours, the vital role of housing in revitalizing downtown and working towards receptivity and inclusion with community engagement. And both included a variety of very successful non-market housing in a variety of neighborhoods. I also attended workshops on sustainable land use planning, on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and visited the Green Municipal Information Funds information drop-in sessions. The trade show was huge, and I particularly noted that there was a booth there from the Biosphere regions across Canada and elsewhere, and had a lengthy conversation with someone there. And he knew about Mabry and was really excited to learn a little bit more and share some stuff. It was really valuable to meet others from across the country, and we have so many common issues in both official languages. And at the closing plenary, rather a shift in topic, and it was addressing harassment of elected officials. And I'll leave it at that, other than to say that both Councillor Martin and myself did attend on a voluntary basis the Oceanside Non-Market Housing Forum, which was held just last week. And that was very interesting and I hope worthwhile use of time. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Beil. And just to pick up on your comments regarding the FCM. So this is where we as council members get to meet with our counterparts across Canada. And the key item was the municipal growth framework that FCM is proposing on behalf of every municipality in Canada. And it was well received by the federal government. Prime Minister Trudeau was there and spoke very well of it and so forth. But it was our jobs at this to promote the advocacy and appreciate the amount of work that the FCM Board of Directors do in promoting this for all of Canada. And so we had the opportunity to discuss not with the Prime Minister, but also other members of the other parties of the government were all represented as well and had a chance to speak to all of us. And so basically they have acceptance. I can say all of the federal parties have acceptance for the proposal of the municipal growth framework. Their emphasis was that we want the provinces to play a big part of the role as well in this. And I think that they're doing a little bit of let's say saber rattling to get the other one to step up to the plate, and they will as well. It is very important to us because, as you know, the property taxes are the only source of income we have at the municipal level. The other levels of government have considerably different taxes that they can draw on. So we're just helping move that along to include more money to the municipalities who are handling the huge load of preparing our infrastructure for all the future growth and needs with numerous challenges, as was experienced by Calgary while we were actually there, where they had a major infrastructure collapse of the water system. So it was very well done, and it was very informative. And so, yeah, it was a good format. We're moving in a good direction anyways in the next year before we have the next one. So, yeah, and we expect results, and I know that the FCM board will continue to advocate for our behalf. That's great. So is there any other liaison reports that are not on the list that we've neglected to address? No. Okay, thank you for everybody's reports. Do I have a mover and seconder for the special business pursuant to section 90F and K of the Community Charter? Council proceed to a closed meeting to consider items relating to law enforcement and the negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service. And a mover and seconder by Councillor Gore, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? Thank you. We'll move to a council or close in camera.